USB storage for my home network media server with RAID and everything, but it's not, the Enclosure's not doing RAID, you're still doing RAID in software. 10 gigabit USB, media NAS? Yeah, it's more likely than you think, and this is not the first video in that series. Alright, so what have I got going on my desk here? We're going to take a look at the Asustor 4-drive 10 gigabit USB enclosure. Previously, I took a look at this. This is the cheapest one that actually works from ProBox. The cooling leaves a lot to be desired. It's a little louder than it needs to be, but it works, and it has a fan that's basically replaceable. It's okay. One of the things we also took a look at was our Asustor flash-based NAS. Flash-based storage, it's great. Flash-based storage is perhaps not great when we're talking about surveillance because flash memory wears out faster than mechanical hard drives, and for surveillance footage, you really don't need to be recording surveillance footage to flash. So if you plug a USB enclosure like the ProBox into this, it works. And you can set up a RAID array on it in Linux, just the same way that you always did. But there wasn't really a clean way to do that in the Asustor GUI. Well, the Asustor box, it doesn't work that way. You plug it in and it knows and it can set it up. So it actually unlocks some functionality in the software that is otherwise not there when you're using a regular device. But before I get ahead of myself, let's take a closer look at the device itself. This is the AS500 4U. For me? Yes, for you. If you've never done this before, that's one of the reasons you buy a name brand NAS, is because there's all kinds of help and instructions and technical support and QR codes to get you there. So the first thing you notice, this enclosure is much larger physically. It's got a much larger fan that's both appealing and fantastic. In here we have a Delta Electronics, that's a good brand, power brick. It is DC 12 volts, 7.5 amps, 90 watts. Oh, it's the same exact kind of power brick that comes with the Asustor flash-based NAS. It's got a whole bunch of mounting screws. I think these are for SSDs though, 2.5 inch. A quick installation guide. And they've got a USB-C cable that you can actually screw in. That's fancy. Now this unit costs more, but you get more. You get a much nicer power brick and the nicest USB-C cable I've ever seen. Okay, it's A to C, but still. I will be using dual actuator 18 terabyte Seagate hard drives. The Mach 2 drives that I've reviewed separately, be sure to check that out. These drives are wicked fast, and they're also hard mode for an enclosure like this because they use a little bit more power than normal SATA drives. Asustor was right. In their storage management software, the external enclosure does show up differently than just a run-of-the-mill USB disk enclosure, and you can use their software GUI to create a RAID array. The GUI still doesn't detect these as dual actuator hard drives to set them up optimally because basically there's a front half and a back half of the drive that work independently of one another. And so if you run a benchmark like a Crystal Disk Mark, at the same time on two different partitions, you double the speed, which normally you get less than half the speed on a normal mechanical hard drive because you get a lot of overhead having the read-write head move mechanically back and forth between two different areas. But with this, you've got two different read-write head groups on the same set of platters. Well, they're on different sets of platters. It's on the same spindle, but each head group has its own set of platters that goes with it. And then the software sort of logically makes the drive appear as if it's one drive. But to use it efficiently, your operating system has to be aware of that. Well, Linux is aware of that. The Linux disk scheduling and all that other kind of stuff has been set up to be able to deal with that. Linux MD will use this no problem, but it's not exposed in the GUI. So you're still going to be relegated to going to the command line to set it up, but with 4 drives and a 10 gigabit interface, 4 drives is going to saturate 10 gig anyway, so as a practical matter, it doesn't really matter. Now in terms of whisper quiet operation and temperatures, I wish there was an easy way to set the fan speed to run a little higher. These dual actuator drives do run a bit warm, even with this fan setup, about 50 C, give or take. But you can hear the fan ramp up a little bit. I have a feeling the set point is around 55 or 56 C for what it's monitoring, I guess, for the drives. This case does have superior sound and vibration dampening. It's going to hold the drives in place. These are full sleds. It's toolless, but it's not a, drives on bare metal situation. This is actually a far better setup in terms of a mounting solution for 4 helium-filled hard drives spinning really fast right next to one another. Surprisingly, I do think this is quiet. I was not expecting this, but I do think this is quiet enough to use with mechanical hard drives, even in a living room. You can hear the hard drives accessing more than the enclosure, but if this is in the floor or somewhere that it's not right next to your ear, you're going to be hard-pressed to hear this across the room. And of course, the flash-based NAS itself is whisper quiet. So this really does give you the best of both worlds. I mean, with those T-Create NVMe in here, if you didn't see the last build video that I did with the Asustor solid-state NAS, this NAS has 12 M.2 slots in it. So you could get a bunch of 1 terabyte inexpensive M.2 and run, 10 terabytes of flash storage with redundancy. And everything's going to launch lightning fast. You can run applications, containers. We put Tailscale on this. We put, some Docker stuff on it. You're going to want to add more RAM to it if you do that. But it does work well. You got 2 RAM slots, so this setup works really well. If you want to DIY a NAS, we did a video on that as well. This USB disk enclosure would work really well. If you do decide that you need lots and lots of computational horsepower, you want to run ZFS, you want 64 gigabytes of memory, plus 8 or 12 or 16 cores, then you can get a mini PC and use it in conjunction with this external disk shelf. We get the B-Link SER7 here, and it has got a multiplicity of high-speed 10 gig and USB 4 ports on it. It has 8 insanely fast cores, and so you use this in conjunction with that, and we're talking 60 terabytes of redundant storage, plus whatever you've got in here. It's a pretty crazy world we live in, and all of it's whisper quiet. So insane horsepower plus gobs of storage, or just whisper quiet, 28 watts at idle. That's been a quick look at the Asustor AS500-4U. Unless there's a pinned comment below, this thing is still going strong. This is part of our long-term testing with our external USB disk enclosures. Basically, I run these forever in a torture test kind of scenario to see if ZFS throws errors on these drives. So I take these drives, I make a RAID Z1 pool, and then I just sort of write a whole bunch of data to them over a period of 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. See what happens. So far, so good on this thing, but we're only like a week and a half into the burn-in for this, so we got some more time. I ran the other one. I was really expecting the Pro Box to die, and it hasn't yet so far, and it's made it like 3 months. So it's fine. I'm Whittle, this is Level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums if you have any questions, or I don't know, we want to look at other stuff, USB disk enclosures. Anybody got a lead on some more good 10 gigabit USB disk enclosures? This one's actually really impressive. Build quality, features, etc., etc. Nice. Good job, Asustor. All right. I'm signing out, and you can find me in the forums. See ya.